And joining us right now by Skype from Japan, our next guest, Rayme Michaels. I'm going to spell it. It's Rayme. Rayme is the author of three books, a very talented writer. One, Incorrigibility. Two, Red Love. They're both published by Lulu. And his current book, Screw the Devil's Daiquiri, that is Melange Books. You can go to the website, so you can go to Amazon.com, BarnesandNoble.com, and I want to give you his website. It's Rayme hyphen Michaels, Michaels .blogspot.com. Rayme, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, you're an unusual talent in the sense that it appears that your abilities lie in a number of areas. You've done comedy, you've written on thrillers. How do you explain that, and where did your interest begin?
Well, my interests range due to the fact that I've always been into movies, comic books, novels, picture books from when I was very, very small. Cartoons, I'm influenced from many, or I've been influenced by many different mediums, and I guess it just comes out in my writing.
So, who did you kind of look up to, whether it's superheroes or comic strip characters? Who are the ones that perhaps you incorporated into some of your writing? I don't mean specifically, but derivation of some ideas.
Okay, well, I became a bookworm when I was 8 years old. While everyone else was playing, I'd always be walking around the schoolyard with my nose in a book. I used to love Choose Your Own Adventures because they put me in control of where the story was going and allowed my imagination to run wild while at the same time being intrinsically involved in the story. And I, of course, used to absolutely love Roald Dahl, James and the Giant Peach, Matilda, The Twits, Charlie and the Great Glass Elevator. They blew my mind. They were all so great. I really like Judy Blume too, Super Fudge and Tales of a Fourth Grade Nothing, and I especially like Bunnicula by Deborah and James Howe, the story of a vampire rabbit. At the end, it's left up to you to decide whether he's actually a vampire or not, so it's a total mystery. I found that really interesting. That was the year I read my first comic book too, and it was love at first read. It was a Spider-Man comic.
All right, interesting. Obviously, you've had a lot of experience prior to writing, and it was the impetus for you having published three books. Can you just give a really brief overview of the first two books, and then let's get into Screw the Devil's Daiquiri?
Yeah, sure. I'll do right. I'll do just that. My first book is called Incorrigibility, as you said. It's an irreverent, surreal, anti-chick lit kind of comedy, dialogue-driven and crude from the get-go. It's kind of like a cartoony sex comedy, only it's not a cartoon. It's just a wacky novella. My second book is called Red Love, as you also said. It's a dark, gory, romantic vampire thriller. It won honorable mention at the top of the list for general fiction at the 2014 London Book Festival in December. And to give you an idea as to what kind of a book it is, in Chapter 2, my two star-crossed vampire lovers crucify a priest to an altar and then have graphic erotic sex on it. So as you can probably imagine, it's not for kids. My newest book is called Screw the Devil's Daiquiri, as you also said, and it's a dark urban comedy meets psychological drama. All my books are very different from one another. It's about a womanizer and possible schizophrenic named John Hazel who is suddenly offered a serious job promotion by the CEO of his company, David Wall, under the condition that John help him kill his wife. So John finds himself between a rock and a hard place when Mr. David Wall's wife, Victoria Wall, asks John to do the same for her, that is, kill David. Aside from the plot summary, though, John is a character with a post-traumatic, hyperactive mind who was raised on film and television and currently struggles with thoughts of his own mortality. Some book, a black comedy, actually. The reason I said he's possibly schizophrenic is because he's haunted and annoyed by either the spirits or imaginary spirits of Giovanni Boccaccio, Francois Rabelais, and a she-devil named Sabrina, who is always dressed in black lingerie, and it's up to the reader to decide whether they actually exist or not. So influences such as these don't help with John's prurient mind, which has a fascinating development that I add to the puzzle of bit by bit as the story unfolds. What adds to the madness of his life is that he ends up having two hitmen on his back and an egomaniacal, sex-crazed, confrontational coworker named Jackie, who happens to be Mr. Wall's mistress, which, as you can imagine, doesn't help matters either.
So, whom would you say this book is intended for? Obviously, not a very young audience.
Um, Definitely fans of shows like Weeds and Californication, especially the latter, as well as people who like reading contemporary existential literature and who are interested in psychological matters such as narcissism. Also, as with my first book, Incorrigibility, it's a good way for women to get inside the minds of men.
Joining us, the very well-spoken Rayme Michaels, the author of three books, the latest, Screw the Devil's Daiquiri. What is your trend of thought when you're writing these books? Is it character development where the emphasis is, and the most difficult part, character development or the plot?
Um, Screw the Devil's Daiquiri is a book that was building up inside me my entire life, and I wrote it in search of a better understanding of myself. It's autobiographical in many ways, very introspective, and at the time that I wrote it, I was trying to overcome what Nietzsche called the great nausea of life. Life seemed actually dead to me, and I overcame that world weariness and angst by writing Screw the Devil's Daiquiri in the same way that Nietzsche overcame his nausea of life by writing Human All Too Human. So I basically put it all on John, my protagonist. I put the burden all on him. I created a character raised on movies and television, as I and many children of the 80s and 90s were, with issues that I've always struggled with, like post-traumatic stress disorder, ADHD, OCD that manifests itself in obsessive thoughts, insomnia, an abusive father, and perpetual death contemplation. Ever since I was 8 years old, I haven't been able to accept the fact that I'm going to die one day. It drives me batty. It just seems impossible to me and makes everything seem so absurd. And I tried to tackle that matter with the book. So it's as much existential as it is Rabelaisian. Also, it's a book about lost innocence and serves as a warning to people, and particularly abusive fathers who drink too much, that it's far too easy for them to turn their child or children into maladjusted adults simply by being a negative influence in their lives rather than a loving, positive one. And in the process of putting all that out there, I basically share myself with the world, something I guess I've always wanted to do, and writing works best for me as a medium in which to do that. And I love making people laugh as much as I love making them think, so hopefully it does that for you too.
Yeah, excellent explanation, very insightful. My curiosity, where do you go from here with that very active, stimulating mind? What's next?
Um, I really want to go to Europe. I haven't been there yet. I really want to go to
Oh,
Barcelona,
I don't
Florence,
mean I don't
Rome.
mean geographically. I mean
Okay.
in your career.
Okay, well, I'm always, I have a very active imagination, and I'm always trying to think of ways to direct these thoughts of mine into like new, like innovative, narratives, and I'm always trying to put them together in different ways that can work. So it's not just like a hodgepodge of things. And so, I mean, I love writing. I'll always love writing. I'll always be a writer. And beyond that, I mean, I don't. I just like just gonna continue doing what I'm doing.
Rayme, what traits do you value most in another human being, and which ones do you dislike the most?
Mm, Nobility and a good sense of humor are traits that I would definitely regard as very high on my list of ones that I value. And ones that I dislike, I'd say pettiness, vindictiveness, and unwarranted resentment and hostility.
Let's go back to your childhood, although I'm not a psychologist. What were a couple of your favorite movies?
um, I absolutely loved Who Framed Roger Rabbit.
Oh, that was a great
Yeah,
movie.
I still remember the effect it had on me when I saw it in the theater at the age of 7. A part of me has always wished there actually was a Toontown. I love Tim Burton, I love Beetlejuice, and I love the first Batman, and but also later on, like in the 90s, I absolutely love. I still love it. I just find it hilarious. Ace Ventura, Pet Detective. I think it's just out of this world. It still cracks me up. I love Jim Carrey.
All
And
right, we're just about out of time. Thanks for joining us with an inspirational dissertation. Rayme Michaels, author of three books, including Screw the Devil's Daiquiri. This is Stu Taylor. We'll be back after a break.